How do you see the end of the year rolling through for people's electricity prices and that sort of thing? Actual real energy based dailies that we're going to be using through when it comes into the cold period. You talked about those
Yeah,
trends
we're
of
gonna.
which months it goes up and down based on the need.
Yeah, well, it's generally going to go higher. So, and one thing I didn't talk about was coal. And a company like BTU is basically now they're primary producers now in the Peabody, where Peabody was in the Powder River Basin. And I think that's Wyoming. They're just about out of debt. When they come out of debt, they're going to be able to buy back shares and do dividends. At some point, the Fed can't raise rates faster than the monetization of debt that's going to occur, and so we fully expect the price of silver now to start trying to break out. Plus, everybody and their brothers throwing solar panels on around the world. Each solar panel has about 2 ounces of silver in it, and so they're rapidly draining the markets of silver.
And good afternoon, everyone. Today with me, Bob Kudla, tradelikeagenius.com. Now, last month we were talking about indicators of energy, and that would be a huge catalyst for movement in markets and our daily lives, and how that everything that is we see in the world right now as an event is going to affect us moving into this last quarter here of 2022. We just saw the oil cuts, 2 million barrels a day, but is it really 2, or is it more really taken off the shelf 1? And to clue us in on how energy prices are going to be moving forward and how that might affect all of us. Hyperinflation, inflation, deflation, where does it go from here? I'm really curious myself, because Bob's had his finger on the pulse for such a long time. And things foretold in the beginning of the year are now coming home to roost. So, if you'd watched any of our interviews at the beginning of the year talking about the fertilizer debacle, the whole energy debacle, how this was going to work in tandem with food, energy, and economy, and then the downward spiral as the unaffordability would move into play, and we seem that we found ourselves right here. So how do we protect ourselves moving forward is the question, financially, as well as getting your families ready for these changes. So Bob, appreciate you joining me again. They should have turned back on the pipelines here. They should have renewed oil leases, and we still sit at a deficit, and they're all complaining that somebody else is the problem instead of ourselves. We need to point those fingers back and get our own energy production up and running in America again.
Yeah, so Dave, actually, I have a wheat chart up to start the thing, but I'll get to oil in a second. So the oil ministers have decided to cut 2 million barrels a day of oil from global production, and we had a massive reversal in oil from basically the Biden administration trying to sell down the reserves that we have here in Louisiana. So that's ended, as I think, as of today. And then OPEC's timing was probably non-coincidental. And so, Biden gets to go into election here with rising oil prices, rising food prices. On rent is that I know here in California, we're still double-digit growth in rent prices. And then we also have basically double-digit growth in medical costs. So the 4 horsemen of the economic apocalypse are riding and galloping strongly. And I'm going to go through some of the charts, same time show you our system. We took our system to another level, and now we have our algorithm is pushing out alerts to now directly to the folk. And actually, you can kind of see it here with these ribbon bars on here. It's showing you buys and sells on the system. But just orientate you to wheat. This is a trade we've been in. I actually closed this trade out. I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday. I've been on vacation, but the trade went out at 9:13. We sold the WEAT. But as you can see here, it's just been grinding higher here going into the season. And you can see from looking at the chart here, basically at the end of August going into fall is when you want to buy wheat. And so we went ahead and we bottomed out. If you notice this gray bar here, it's telling us these are sell the rip mode. So we look for these magenta triangles. You can short wheat. You can see how that works. short wheat here, and then it flipped the model to buy the dip, and then you buy the dip to go long wheat, long wheat. So I buy this on ETF, but you can use it for you can also use it for if you're trading futures as well. This is on a 4-hour time frame. It's best for ETFs and stocks to use 4-hour with my system unless you're trading SPY on the 5-minute, which I'll show that to you in a little bit too. So let's talk oil here because oil was the big move of the day. Let's see.
Yeah, because the Fed, they're trying to destroy a lot of economies and, hit it so hard that there will be no oil consumption in more developing nations. And then suddenly OPEC cuts it and is like, all right, we'll play your game. All right, next, ball's over in your court. So where does this take us to? Now we're going to get into this battle between the Fed and OPEC throwing things back and forth at each other. So energy, yeah, coming into the end of the year, even in East Tennessee, which is unbelievable, they got nuclear and an enormous amount of hydro, yet everybody's electricity prices have gone up, and they're asking why. You're running nuclear and hydro. What's the deal? Why is it going up? So even if that, what you consider renewable already in fashion is, and they're just raising prices because the rest of the world is, then where does that leave people that are actually needing the natural gas? And the whole base thing there, you need the gas to produce the fertilizer. You can't make fertilizer out of electricity. So how do you see the end of the year rolling through for people's electricity prices and that sort of thing? Actual real energy-based dailies that we're going to be using through when it comes into the cold period. You talked about those trends, which months it goes up and down based on the need.
Yeah, well, it's generally going to go higher. So, and one thing I didn't talk about was coal. And a company like BTU is basically now they're primary producers now in the Peabody, where Peabody was in the Powder River Basin. I think that's Wyoming. They're just about out of debt. When they come out of debt, they're going to be able to buy back shares and do dividends. So we just did a 20% move in BTU 2 weeks ago, and it's gonna do it again. So this thing went from $20 to $27, Dave. So I was going to buy more today. I kind of held off, but I'm going to go back in it again hard, and I'm looking for at least a double in the next 12 months on BTU because they're going to be able to buy back their shares because they've basically been under restriction, from their bankers of what they can do. The loan covenants weren't allowing them to do some of these balance sheet friendly things. So I would encourage people to take a hard look at BTU as well. If you notice here too, I was pointing out, I did another interview, just showed people here. Look, everybody was telling everybody to short oil here. I had this line in the sand for me was support from a long time back for oil. We're hitting it and I got a buy signal at the same time. And so even though this was a counter trend move, going into the end of the month here when the stock market was crashing, you get a buy signal on oil, you pay attention to it because that's the reason why the stock market is struggling is because of inflation. So this move here, that's a 5.45% move from a buy signal to a sell signal on oil, which is pretty huge, especially if you're trading futures. And then here you got a sell signal that rolled it back down again. Okay, and here's the crossover down here on our system. And then from there on, it just went straight up. Now, I'm heavy energy. I never sold anything. I've been adding where I could because the story on energy is that if you look here, we came down and we broke down through the minus 2.3. This is when Biden started to really started kicking in the gear here for the SPR releases. And now he's done. And OPEC now is kicking in the gear for production cuts. Now, the interesting thing about oil is that you tend to rise, right, first half of the year. We rose into this move in May here. This is an expected move. This pullback into May is expected, and this rise into the end of June is expected. And this fall into middle of September is expected. What was not in the probabilities was this push down into the end of September, which right here, this last move here, from the 15th of September down. Usually oil bottoms around September 15th, and you start getting a push higher. This time they drove it down an additional week, and now it's coming up here pretty hard. So if we want oil to really kick in again, we need to see a break back over $98 here on the daily chart, okay? And then we know the move is over on the downside. But if you own a lot of energy companies, anything with oil over $80 is going to make you a lot of money over time. And with production cuts in the OPEC land, and with the United States actually production stalling, is a recipe for oil. Into 2023, I'm told, expect 110 average price for oil. 2024, expect 135 average price for oil. So the Fed can't print oil, and so raising rates isn't going to matter to people buying something they have to have. If you notice here on these squares too, so our system has risk on, risk off models. And so I'll show you SPY here. Once that risk off model came on board, is that you don't want to be long the market in aggregate. You know, you can look for your shots, but if you look at that from here, is when we got that risk off, right? Here's a little bit of a counter trend trade. And then when this trade here hit, we went from 40.60 down to 3,600. This is a pretty big move. That's a 10% move in a couple of weeks, all right? Now what we did was we pushed up into this resistance here, this black line here. That's resistance. This is called moving VWAP, moving volume weighted average price. Very important number for institutional traders. So we came back in. It's kind of like, I call this ollie oxen free. So when it pushes too far away from it, the institutional guys will try to drive it back into that number. If you notice, it did the same thing here. Rose up, it drove into that number. And so that's what happens here. Now, seasonally, believe it or not, for SPY, we're expecting at some point in the middle of October, if not sooner, that we'll get a breakout into the election. Okay, and then, you know, the election then would be 3 weeks from the middle of October, right? And then we expect the market to sell off again. I think the weight of the earnings coming out and guidance going forward, with energy prices rising, rents rising, healthcare rising, food rising, I think it's going to be too much for the market to bear. And then after the election, I think we'll break lows. If you notice here, we had a test 36.39. We broke that test. That's an unusual position for what they call a mid-year election year. Usually they call it the June low holds, okay? There's an April low that doesn't hold, a June low usually holds. They broke that low, but they brought it back up. So we'll have to see whether or not the pattern persists and moving higher. It's going to get its first test right here. And if it breaks up from here, in order for this market to change trend again, if you notice, look what it's been doing. It's going to have to climb back over 4,000 for ES again. I think that's a tall drink of water. I think it's either going to fail here and try to come down and double bottom here, or we're going to push up to 4,000 and then fail and try to put a double bottom in the next couple of weeks. We have a really good friend.
Let me ask a question about risk on, risk off. Are you guys on the VIX there as well?
No, this is a liquidity risk on, risk off. So we watch Fed liquidity. Fed rules all. So, you know, we're looking at the Fed's balance sheet, and we're also looking at the bank's balance sheets. So we created an algorithm from that, and from that algorithm, we can determine whether or not the Fed is injecting money into the banking system or taking money out of the banking system. And as a direct correlation to how likely it is you're going to make money going long or make money going short. So when you see a risk buy, the market is generally favorable to a move. And if you see risk off, it's generally unfavorable for a move. If you noticed here, we had a risk off move, and then we had a quick risk on move that immediately failed, and that should have gave you alarm bells, right? So this is the first thing that we look at, Dave. We look at these squares. Where are we? Are we in risk on, risk off? We're still in risk off. We're almost back to a risk on trade, but we're still officially risk off right now. And then what we look at, Dave, from there is then we look at basically our what's called our levels algorithm. And this is basically telling us whether we're staying in ranges or not. And here it was pressing, 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 and it broke that range. See, when it broke down, it broke that range. And now you turned into you have a cap on price, and then you get a sell signal with risk off. And then we get a sell signal that's looking at down here is basically, this is a graphical interpretation of these triangles here. Is that so when you see certain conditions met, and this is more than momentum, it's looking at ADX, it's looking at Bollinger Bands, it's looking at momentum, it's looking at a number of characteristics. And when you get a cap like this, my great cap, and you get a sell signal, this move here from 39.69 down to, basically last Friday, if you had calls on right here, this was a $20,000 to $30,000 move, and we actually had a trader that made $26,000, okay, trading this signal with us. So you can, when volatility comes up like this, you can make a lot of money. And if you notice, if you look at the chart, is risk off, you buy puts, risk on, you buy calls. Okay, this trade paid slightly, this trade paid a lot, this trade didn't pay at all, this trade paid nicely, this trade paid nicely. So it's a probability game, and you just manage your stops and your size, and you'll make money. And you don't have to stay just on a daily on this. You can just go down. We trade SPY mostly. During the day I trade SPY and IDS. So we've been looking for opportunities to trade SPY all day here, and trying to find opportunities for the trade. So we caught this down move here, and then we did a reversal when the blue heat here came up, and we went long into here, and then we just sat and waited, okay, and then we went short again for the end of the day today. Okay, if you notice, the market rolled over. So we try not to trade during the middle of the day, Dave. So people that trade will know this. Basically trading from 9:30 to 11 o'clock or even 9 a.m. About 9:30 is probably best. My time, California, till 11 o'clock is kind of foolish. Even though you get moves like this, sometimes it's low volume. It usually is choppy. And some guys just wait till the last hour to trade too. And that's what this trade looks like here. This is the last half hour of the day. It just 40 minutes, it just dumped, okay, because it's trying to get back to this black line here. So that's SPY. I think a lot of guys listening to the show love silver, okay, and I think Hope is beginning to poke its head out here. This was a bit of an inverted head and shoulders here for me. You see this? And now, right now, this is a neckline. So what we're looking at for silver now is that, it's not a move to the moon, right? But you have a low here at 1650, and you have a high here of 19. So the measured move will take you should take you to 2150, okay? And so you go back and look at other resistance around that area, and if you notice, that's kind of where there's a gap in here, right? 2190 area, okay? Down here, there's some probably volume in here at 2131. So 2150 for silver is not out of the question. And so at some point, the Fed can't raise rates faster than the monetization of debt that's going to occur. And so we fully expect the price of silver now to start trying to break out. Plus, everybody and their brothers throwing solar panels on around the world. Each solar panel has about 2 ounces of silver in it, and so they're rapidly draining the markets of silver. And you probably talk cotton more than I do, or you talk what's in the bank's vaults, but there's essentially nothing in these vaults. They're all paper money schemes. But this is very interesting. Now, I don't do SOV itself. I like the miners. And just for people that listen to this show, I like American or Canadian miners, even more so than even like the Mexican silver miners, because they're starting to scare me a little bit. They nationalized a lithium mine. So who's to say they won't go after silver? Silver starts to move too. And look, if you guys want to trade with us, just, we have a million ideas. We have trades every day. So if you want to trade with us, go to tradelikeagenius.com. Like I said, our track record is, we win 2 out of 3 trades. Remember, we're not an advisory service, we're an education service. So we'll teach you how to trade. We throw trades out every day to prove our model, so you can see that it works. Take those trades, you'll make money from them. And we also will give you access to our algorithms. So everyone but the Fed liquidity one, that one's private, and we actually have we don't give you the indicator, but we actually give you the list of the stocks hitting those arrows, those triangles I talked about. So you have decided to take advantage of these discounts. 65% off stuff that's bundled. Non-bundle items are you have the promo code, you put it down below. I think
Columbus for 40% off.
40% off, and we trade crypto, we trade stock, we trade the futures and the options market. So we can help you navigate everything. Phil, my partner in crypto, look, he knows how to swing you back and forth, long and short on those things. Tells you when it's safe or not safe to be in the alt world, and then what alts are moving. So it's a really good program. Even if Bitcoin does nothing, as long as it moves, back and forth, we'll make money from it.